How much time have you spent sitting today? Seriously, stop and think for a moment. For many of us, it's probably more than we realize. I mean, whether we're locked into a desk job, navigating a long commute, or just, unwinding on the couch, it's become a huge, often unseen part of modern life. Today, we're taking a deep dive into something that impacts nearly everyone: sedentary behavior. But here's the twist. It's not just about not exercising. It's a whole different beast with its own unique and frankly kind of surprising physiological impacts. Impacts that can affect even the fittest among us. We're drawing our insights from a really comprehensive 2023 review article by Pinto and colleagues, which unpacks the nuts and bolts of how prolonged sitting affects our bodies. Our mission today is to understand these distinct impacts and, more importantly, discover the surprising power we hold to counteract them, often with, well, incredibly small changes.
It's truly fascinating, because for a long time, the terms sedentary and physically inactive were often just used interchangeably. But the science has dramatically evolved. We now understand these are separate entities, which means you can actually be someone who hits the gym regularly, maybe runs marathons, lifts weights, and still be highly sedentary for the majority of your day, carrying distinct risks.
Separate risks, even if you exercise.
Exactly. Sedentary behavior is formally defined as any waking activity with a really low energy expenditure, typically 1.5 metabolic equivalents, METs, or less performed while sitting or lying down. This means that even if you clock an hour of intense exercise, the other, say, 10+ hours you spend sitting can still have their own adverse, unique effects on your body.
Okay, let's unpack this then. Let's go on a kind of physiological journey, maybe head to toe, to understand what happens when we stay seated for too long. It sounds like it's not just doing nothing. The body's actually doing something in response to the sitting.
Precisely. Imagine your body as a finely tuned machine. When you sit for hours, it's not just idling, it's actively recalibrating, almost anticipating a prolonged rest state. And this leads to some, well, maladaptations that are distinct, even if some mirror those seen with physical inactivity. High volumes of sedentary behavior can have adverse physiological impacts, even in the presence of large volumes of aerobic or resistance exercise.
So exercise isn't a complete shield.
It's a strong antidote for some things, absolutely, but maybe
Okay.
not all the unique challenges brought on by prolonged sitting itself.
Right. Let's kick things off then by looking at body composition. You might think, well, I'm just sitting, not exactly gaining weight just from that, but it sounds like it's more complex.
It really is. Prolonged sitting has a surprisingly direct and potent impact on how your body stores fat.
Yeah.
What's particularly striking here is the increase in total body fat, and especially the visceral fat depot.
And that's the dangerous internal fat, right?
Yeah.
Around the organs.
Exactly. The fat deep within your abdomen. Studies have shown something like a 7% increase in this intra-abdominal fat mass after just 14 days of reduced step count, just 2 weeks. And these aren't minor shifts. Changes in body fat mass of maybe 3% to 14% from increased sitting are significantly more pronounced than typical age-related changes. And we know increased visceral fat is a major player in higher risks of chronic diseases like type 2 diabetes and heart disease. So yeah, it's not just the scale number, it's where the fat is going.
Okay, so fat storage is one thing. What about how our body actually uses energy? You mentioned metabolism.
Yes. This is where it gets really interesting for how your body processes the fuel you give it. Your metabolism takes a significant hit. We see clear impacts across the board: glucose, lipids, protein metabolism.
Let's start with glucose, blood sugar.
Okay. As little as 1 day of high sedentary behavior can reduce whole-body insulin sensitivity by up to 39%. Now, insulin sensitivity is basically how well your cells respond to insulin to take up glucose from your blood. When sensitivity drops that much, your body struggles to use glucose effectively. Blood sugar stays higher.
39% in 1 day, that's huge.
It is. And here's the kicker. Simply reducing energy intake, eating less during prolonged sitting, doesn't fully mitigate this decline. It only lessens it by about 18%, which raises a really important question. Sitting itself seems to be a profound metabolic disruptor beyond just the calories burned or not burned. We also see increased postprandial, that's after meal glucose, and insulin responses. So your blood sugar spikes higher and stays elevated longer after you eat.
So let me get this straight. Someone could be hitting the gym, eating well, but if they sit for 10 hours a day, those sitting hours are actively working against some of those benefits, at least for sugar control.
Precisely. It creates this kind of silent struggle within the body. And it's not just glucose. For lipids, or fats, prolonged sitting can lead to a poor lipid profile. Think increased fasting triglycerides, total cholesterol, the bad LDL cholesterol, and a decrease in the good HDL.
Okay, so worse cholesterol numbers too. Is there a mechanism for that?
Yeah, one key mechanism seems to involve a reduction in skeletal muscle lipoprotein lipase, or LPL, activity. LPL is this crucial enzyme for processing fats in your bloodstream, getting them into your muscles. And surprisingly, this LPL activity can be rapidly reversed with just light-intensity contractile activity.
Light activity, not necessarily a hard workout.
Exactly. But maybe not with moderate to vigorous exercise if it doesn't specifically recruit those muscles involved in LPL regulation.
That's a massive aha moment right there. So small, specific movements might be directly turning on this fat processing machinery in a way that a general workout might actually miss.
Exactly. It suggests a very targeted, local effect of muscle activity. It's distinct from a more global workout benefit. And then there's protein metabolism. That takes a significant hit, too. Studies show reductions in postprandial myofibrillar protein synthetic rate, basically, how your body repairs and rebuilds muscle after eating. This can drop by 25% to 50% in older adults after just 14 days of reduced steps.
Wow, contributing directly to muscle wasting.
Yes, your body's ability to build and repair muscle is seriously suppressed, crucial for strength, recovery, everything.
Okay, so metabolism is clearly affected. What about our hearts and blood vessels? You hear about sitting being bad for the heart.
Absolutely. The seat and posture itself, it acts almost like a constant roadblock for good blood flow. It can lead to what we call vascular dysfunction, particularly in the legs. We observe reduced blood flow and shear rate, that's the force of blood against the vessel walls, and even an increase in artery stiffness.
Stiffer arteries, that doesn't sound good.
Yeah. Not at all. And acutely, like right away, prolonged sitting can increase systolic blood pressure by 3.2 to 4 millimillar HG. If that's sustained day after day, it becomes clinically significant at a population level. And cardiorespiratory fitness, VO2 max, the gold standard measure, it can decline by 6.6% in just 14 days of increased sedentary time.
6.6% in 2 weeks. That's a faster decline than just getting older, isn't it?
Dramatically faster.
Right.
Which raises that crucial question. If this happens in just a couple of weeks, what's the cumulative effect over years?
Are we talking potentially irreversible damage, or is there always a chance to kind of claw that back?
That's what researchers are still working out, the long-term picture. But the cumulative effect is definitely a major concern. It suggests that while some changes are acute, long-term habits could lead to more entrenched issues. It really underscores the urgency.
Okay. And beyond the muscle repair process, what about the actual structure and strength? Do our muscles and bones literally get weaker from sitting?
They absolutely do. We see losses in total fat-free mass, that's muscle basically, and muscle strength. We're talking anywhere from maybe 1.3% to 9% decrease in muscle mass after just days to weeks of increased sitting or immobilization, and an 8% to 25% reduction in muscle strength.
That's huge. Comparable to aging how many years?
Comparable to what we might expect over an entire decade of typical aging. It's startling. There's also this fascinating shift in muscle fiber type, away from the oxidative slow-twitch endurance fibers towards more glycolytic fast-twitch power fibers, which basically means your muscles become less efficient for everyday stuff like walking or standing and less good at biting fat. Your stamina drops quicker. Even bone mineral density can decrease by 0.3% to 1%, particularly in weight-bearing bones, making them more fragile over time. So yes, sitting can literally weaken your physical structure.
And it doesn't stop there, right? It affects the brain, too. I often hear people mention brain fog after a long day sitting at a desk. Is that real?
Yes, there's absolutely a scientific basis for that. Prolonged sitting decreases cerebrovascular blood flow to your brain, and it impairs dynamic cerebral autoregulation. That's your brain's amazing ability to keep its blood supply stable, regardless of posture or blood pressure changes. When that's impaired, your brain isn't getting the consistent, optimized fuel delivery it needs.
Which impacts thinking.
Directly. Some studies show reduced working memory, executive function, visual learning after just 8 hours of uninterrupted sitting. The underlying reasons likely involve those blood sugar spikes affecting brain glucose use, impaired blood perfusion in the brain cortex, and increased inflammation and oxidative stress. All factors linked to cognitive decline.
Yeah.
So yeah, that brain fog feeling, it's a real physiological response.
All right, that all sounds like quite a lot of bad news. It's honestly a bit daunting thinking about how much many of us sit. But you said there's good news, too. The research gives us insights into what we can do about it, even small interruptions.
Yes. This is where the sit less, move more message gets really powerful because the science backs up even minimal action. Now, the effects are often described as, small, albeit marginally clinically meaningful in healthy people. but they can be much more significant for individuals with pre-existing conditions like obesity or type 2 diabetes. And the key takeaway, I think, is that small benefits accumulated daily can lead to surprisingly large impacts over time. It's like compound interest for your health.
Okay, so let's talk about those benefits. What happens immediately, acutely, when we break up sitting? And what about longer term?
Great question. Acutely so, within hours to a few days, breaking up sitting significantly improves those postprandial glucose responses by about 17.5% and insulin responses by 25.1%. We also see immediate reductions in systolic blood pressure, maybe 4.4 millimole Hg, diastolic around 2.4 millimole Hg, and improved lower limb vascular function, that FMD measure we talked about. Flow-mediated dilation increases by 1.5% to 1.9%, healthier, more flexible arteries, almost right away.
That's impressive for just breaking up sitting. And longer term, weeks or months.
Looking longer term, with consistent interruptions, we see small but statistically significant reductions in things like body weight, about 0.6 kilograms, waist circumference, maybe 0.7 to 1.5 centimeters smaller. Percent body fat down 0.3% to 0.7%. Even fasting glucose improves, dropping about 2.5 milli-GDL. Insulin down 1.4 p.m. And HbA1c, that long-term blood sugar marker, improves by about 0.2%. We also see a small bump in good HDL cholesterol, about 0.04 millim, and a modest reduction in systolic blood pressure, about 1.1 millibpd long-term. And that vascular function, the FMD, a 0.93% increase. That's particularly noteworthy because research suggests a mere 1% increase in FMD is associated with a 17% decrease in future cardiovascular event risk.
17% risk reduction linked to that small improvement. Wow, small changes, potentially profound long-term implications.
Exactly. It really highlights the power of consistency.
Okay, those numbers are compelling. So what's the magic formula then? How often, how intense, what kind of movement, what does the FIT principle look like for these interruptions?
All right, the VT frequency, intensity, time, type is key. And the research gives us some good pointers. For glucose responses, frequency seems really important. More frequent breaks, maybe 2 to 6 minute bouts every 20 to 60 minutes, tend to be more effective than less frequent, longer breaks.
So shorter, more often is better for blood sugar. What about intensity, just standing up?
Standing definitely has some benefits over sitting, but light to moderate intensity activity generally seems better for glucose and sometimes blood pressure than just standing still. Higher intensities seem to yield more pronounced metabolic improvements. As for type, aerobic activity interruptions like a brisk walk are great for blood pressure. But even simple resistance activities, things like bodyweight squats or calf raises at your desk, can significantly boost muscle protein synthesis. Remember that muscle building, by 20 to 47% acutely, and improve blood flow. Heck, even just fidgeting has been shown to help attenuate reductions in blood flow in the leg arteries.
Fidgeting helps, so every little bit really does count.
It seems so, which leads to something really fascinating, that Soleus push-ups research.
Ah, yes, I read about that. It sounds almost too simple to be true. Tell us about it.
It's quite revolutionary, really. Hamilton and colleagues demonstrated that sustained, continuous contractile activity of the soleus muscle, that big muscle deep in your calf, just activating it gently but continuously for a few minutes while sitting, can profoundly improve systemic metabolic regulation. We're talking reducing post-meal glucose spikes by 39% to 52% and insulin spikes by 41% to 60%. It also significantly increased local energy demand, about 91 kilocal per hour, and boosted local carbohydrate burning.
Wow, that specific small muscle has such a huge systemic effect. Why the soleus?
It's a truly unique muscle. It's packed with slow-twitch oxidative fibers, meaning it's incredibly resistant to fatigue and primarily uses aerobic metabolism. It loves burning glucose and fats. When you activate it in this sustained, low-intensity way, it acts almost like a metabolic vacuum cleaner for your bloodstream, improving whole-body regulation without requiring intense effort. It really highlights that even very small, specific muscle contractions, if sustained or repeated intelligently, can have a powerful systemic impact. It challenges our traditional view of what exercise even means.
So the natural question then is breaking up sitting like this better than just doing one continuous workout? Should we ditch the gym for soleus push-ups?
Definitely don't ditch the gym. It's not really an either situation. Both strategies have unique benefits, and ideally, we should integrate both. Interestingly, for managing post-meal glucose, frequent interruptions can actually be more effective than a single time-match continuous exercise bout. However, for things like post-meal triglycerides or systolic blood pressure, continuous physical activity might have the edge. So it really raises interesting questions about how best to combine strategies. The key takeaway remains: exercise is vital, but it might not fully counteract the unique negative physiology of prolonged sitting. How you move throughout the entire day matters, not just if you exercise for one block of time.
Right. So bringing this all together, what does this mean for you, the listener, in your daily life? How can people apply this knowledge practically?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, the aggregate impact of these small, consistent changes can be truly profound. While an individual benefit from one break might seem marginally meaningful in a lab study, think about the population level. Even achieving a 2 mmHg average reduction in systolic blood pressure across a population could translate to saving thousands of lives annually from heart disease and stroke. And this low-risk strategy of just breaking up sitting, it's also a fantastic stepping stone. For people who find it really challenging to meet those standard moderate to vigorous exercise guidelines, this is an accessible way to start increasing overall activity and build healthier habits. It's empowering.
It makes becoming more active feel less intimidating. What are the big unknowns still? Where does the research need to go next?
There's still quite a bit to explore. We definitely need more robust, longer-term studies to really nail down the optimal FETT, the best frequency, intensity, time, and type of interruptions for different health outcomes, and, crucially, for diverse populations. We also need to dig deeper into the molecular and cellular mechanisms. Why exactly do these interruptions work so well? Using omics approaches genomics, proteomics could shed light there, and most current evidence, frankly, is based on healthy males. We urgently need more research on females, children, older adults, and especially people living with chronic conditions. Plus, the current public health guideline, sit less, move more, and exercise is largely based on observational epidemiological findings. We need more experimental evidence to truly understand the combined, maybe synergistic effects of reducing sitting and doing regular exercise. It's a really exciting frontier.
Absolutely. This deep dive has certainly shown us that our relationship with sitting is far more complex than just needing to exercise more. Prolonged sedentary behavior has its own distinct, pervasive negative effects, hitting our metabolism, heart, muscles, bones, even our brain function. It's a silent force, really, in our modern lives.
But the truly encouraging news, I think, is that even small, consistent changes can begin to counteract these effects, replacing sitting with even light activity or just consistently breaking up those long bouts. It offers significant benefits. It makes your body more resilient. It's fundamentally about respecting our body's design, which is for movement throughout the day, not just intense bursts followed by stillness.
So the challenge to you, listening, is what small change could you make today, maybe starting tomorrow, to interrupt your sedentary time? Could it be a quick walk around the office or house every hour, trying those soleus push-ups during a meeting or call, simply standing up during TV commercial breaks? What might that small action unlock for your health, your energy, maybe even your focus in the long run?
Remember, even just a simple 2-minute walk every 20 or 30 minutes can make a real metabolic difference. Those small conscious choices to weave movement back into the fabric of your day, they really can add up to a significantly healthier, more resilient you over time. It's about building a better relationship with gravity, in a way.
Take that knowledge, apply it in whatever way works for you, and keep asking questions. Until next time, stay curious and keep moving.